Thank you all for being here. This is the Indie Film Town Hall Part 3, brought to you by IFA Chicago and Chicago International Film Festival Industry Days. Even though I can't see you, it's wonderful to be with you. Thanks for taking your lunch hour on a Thursday to join us for hopefully some solidarity, some information, and some conversation to move our industry forward here in the time of COVID. I want to throw it to Anthony. Anthony, do you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, thank our panelists for coming. Obviously, things are changing on a weekly basis, but some pretty exciting news in terms of production moving forward in our city. So that's some good news, I guess, and amidst a lot of bad news. I'm going to sign off. I'll be on the back end monitoring comments, posting things. So I'm going to let Angie take it from here. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Anthony. Cool. So a couple Indie Film Town Hall updates before we get started. First of all, this is part 3 in an ongoing series. We are committed to you guys to bringing this to you even after we all return to work in person. But keep an eye out for the schedule as it kind of shifts week by week. Additionally, our next Indie Film Town Hall, part 4, that will be on Thursday, June 25th, so 2 weeks from today, also from noon to 1. And we are really excited to be focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Chicago film industry as a whole. And we will also be talking about expanding the Chicago Media Standards Initiative to include DEI focus. So we will keep you guys posted on that, as well as the panelists that we'll be bringing, and we hope you'll join us then. An invite and everything will go out next week for that panel. Cool. So I want to kick it off with some introductions to the fine folks who have donated their lunch hour to be with us today. And if you guys could state your name and the organization and give a brief update on where you're at from a COVID and a reopening level, that would be great. So Brad, you are top in my viewfinder, so I will throw it to you first.
Thanks, Angie. My name is Brad Matthys. I'm the president of IATSE, Local 476, the Motion Picture Studio Mechanics. I'm also a 43-year member. I worked in many different crafts, but most of my career was spent as key grip. The union, of course, is largely completely unemployed, the membership. We've used the last 3.5, 4 months, whatever it's been, seems to have lost track of time, but doing a lot of training across virtually almost all of our crafts. We have 25 or 30 different job categories in what we do that represents roughly 75–80% of a crew on a motion picture, a commercial, or a television program, which is 99% of our work. We've been very aggressive in providing COVID training for our membership, specifically for our first aid people who are one of those crafts that we cover. We're particularly interested in makeup and hair, which we cover, which is going back to work is going to be probably the most difficult of all the crafts to include wardrobe, which is another union, the touching actors. We've had an expert in COVID, a doctor from Northwestern University, do a seminar for that was widely attended by a lot of our members. We have put out a couple of COVID training courses that are required for all of our medical personnel, and their certificates of completion are coming in daily. We've ramped up and offered the management food service course, which is usually reserved for our craft service people. We've given every member the opportunity to take this course. And if you don't know, I've taken it myself. It has to do a lot with germs, sanitation, not so much COVID, but these are the kind of things that we are, as a union, are trying to get out in front of and get our members educated to this stuff as we see the signs of beginning to get back to work. Kwame, how about you?
Oh, nothing much, just hanging out, you know.
Yeah.
No, so the film office has been working with the Department of Health and the mayor's office to craft guidelines for phase 3 that we just released not too long ago. Right now, we are presently looking to start permitting on the 15th, and that would be crews of 10 or less. For right now, that's the safe bet for us. Going into phase 4, we hope to open that up to larger groups and start doing large-scale film production at that point. Right now, the state is scheduled to go into phase 4 around June 26th, and I believe that the city kind of lags behind a little bit and will probably do so by a few days. So we'll see when we'll get into phase 4. But hopefully in phase 4, we're looking at getting into some larger scale film production. And we're working with the health department to get those guidelines for phase 4 that will kind of determine what's happening on stages, what's happening on location, and how we can start these large scale productions going and make sure that they do so safely. Because safety is our first priority, making sure that the people are following the guidelines. You know, we hope that we can create a safe work environment for people to continue to prosper in this economy. But another thing, the city is realizing that the film industry is going to be very good for recovery economy, for the recovery economics of the city. So we're putting an effort into trying to organize infrastructure and other things that support to attract additional film production and even hub site building here in the city of Chicago.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for all your work thus far. And for those of you, a link to the guidelines Kwame mentioned is in the chat box. We'll be taking questions here in a little bit, so feel free to take a look at that. And if you have any questions, we can do our best to answer them. Charles, throwing it your way. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
No problem. Hey, everybody. I'm Charles Andrew Gardner. I'm the president of Chicago Local, SAG-AFTRA. And we have been, to echo everything that Brad and Kwame has already shared, working with the other unions to, produce a way for us to move forward and reopen the industry when it is time. Specifically here in Chicago, some of my efforts has been really around making sure that the community is still there and we feel like, the union is there for the members and the members have a place to still come together and train and prepare for the industry when it reopens. So if you are a member, make sure you check out the Kaufman member resource website. And we're still doing all types of training that is industry specific. So opportunities to go on camera and do our on-cam jam, our voiceover jam. We have mindfulness training, yoga training offered on a weekly basis, things that just kind of keep us level-headed, but then also still to sharpen our tools. So like I said, when we do get an opportunity as performers to come back, we can. And of course, you all know broadcasters are still hard at work, you know, making sure that we're up to date with news and entertainment. So the actors and stunt performers, hang in, we'll get back soon. You're muted.
Totally am. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. Christine, throwing it your way.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks, everybody. Good to see some good, fun faces out there today. I always go to Kwame for my moment of zen. he makes me calm. I'm Christine Dudley. I'm the Senior Advisor to the Illinois Production Alliance. The Alliance has been around since 2002. It was formed as a 501c6, which is under IRS rules, a advocacy and association. Our mission is to support and advocate for film production in Illinois, along with advocating to government leaders and forming community partnerships with not only the creative, but also the business community in terms of some of the things that Kwame was pointing out as it relates to making film production not only vibrant, but also keeping awareness of the economics of it, and also all of the pieces that go into production really are, everybody on this call knows this, and Angie, I know you know this very intimately, is that it's a small business. You're running a business, and government intersects with a lot of your life, and you don't have time to necessarily understand all of those moving pieces. So as an association, we work in partnership with the government partners, and have been working with Kwame and Peter behind the scenes to, you know, provide information. Our board is headed by Eric Chadron, who is also the executive director of SAG-AFTRA Chicago, and all of the unions are members, along with many of the vendors that you do business with, and some of our national stakeholders, including NBC, are part of our membership. And we interact not only with the local community, but on the national scope. We recently pivoted and are doing a newsletter. I think Angie and Anthony were kind enough to invite me a few weeks ago, and a lot of folks signed up. So send us a note to illinoisproduction@gmail.com. And we've been doing a newsletter that is basically a compendium of all the information that you're seeing out there that we believe is relative to, so you don't have to chase it. It's all flooding our inboxes. And in addition, most importantly, I think for this conversation, is the idea came to mind that all of the good folks on this call and the community at large and the national organizations are setting forth the safety guidelines. Now you have to source the things that you need. You need to find out where you can get hand sanitizer, shields. And as we know, because of the crisis, some of these things are at a premium, some are being manufactured, places are pivoting themselves to make products. So we have established, and I will offer this afterwards if you guys could post it, an open source document where a small group of us have gone through both Kwame's guidelines, the industry guidelines, about everybody's guidelines, and identified what items are going to be necessary with an eye toward getting those sourced in Illinois, because anything purchased in Illinois, a good or a service, if you qualify for the tax credit, should be a qualified expenditure. And with budgets going up as a result of these new sources or new resources, I strongly believe that you should always buy in Illinois. But so we're working on that, and we're asking people to participate in an open source document to add to as they identify sources, and especially for the indie community, it will be an opportunity to, rather than spend your day Googling, go to that document and find under each category places that you can go and contract with. So that's kind of what we've been up to, paying attention to the COVID land.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. I did post the IPA email in the chat, so feel free to reach out. I want to, a reminder that as we go through this, to please post your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. And if you raise your hand, it's a cool little emoji, but that doesn't actually mean much to us on this side. So please ensure to post everything in the Q&A box. Cool. Mike, I wanna throw it to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Mike Koon. I am the director of the film office at Visit Champaign County, which is run under the auspices of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Just a aside, I joined the office in January, and then 2 months later, obviously COVID hit, so it's been a real challenge. But I will say that one of the advantages that we have here in Champaign County is that we are a centralized place. One of the few in downstate Illinois where you can come to us and we have all, access to all the permits, to the health office, to the police departments, to all the municipalities, to the public works. We're kind of a one-stop shop that they can, folks can come to us and we can take care of all that. And so as we are anticipating reopening, phase 4, the central region in Illinois is in good shape to go to phase 4 on June 26th. I've received a lot of inquiries, both locally and on both coasts of the potential to come to Champaign County to shoot. We've had a number of both commercial and films that have been shot in our region, and our region also includes the Amish territory, Arthur, Tuscola, Arcola, that region, on the west to Piatt County and Monticello, and then we actually even work with folks in Vermilion County as well. So we've been busy despite kind of the shutdown. I've been in contact with a lot of the hotels because that's a lot of the questions that we're getting. They seem very receptive to hosting crews and being able to quarantine them off to provide meals and instead of buffets and box lunches and things like that. So we're hoping to kind of be back online. I will say this, that Champaign County, all the municipalities, there's not going to be the opportunity, at least right now, of a special use permit until around Labor Day. But obviously, if we can get to phase 4, the opportunity to film with 50 people or less and a private location is certainly an option. And we we haven't had any firm commitments, but I think the police force in the area, I think would be amenable to street closures and things like that during that time as well, just not special use permits. So, we have the advantage of having still several nice urban settings in downtown. We work with the university, and then we have a lot of rural settings. So the only thing that we really aren't able to offer are the mountains and the beach setting. But we are, we get a lot of, it's surprisingly a large number of films have been shot in our area. And like I said, we find that filmmakers, instead of in this time feeling comfortable with our size location as opposed to some of the largest cities where they have not advanced as far and maybe don't feel as safe. So we've, I think we're right in the discussion with our local health officials. They realize, we were able to communicate sort of the needs, the demands that this industry has. And so we feel like we're at least out in front of what those are and hope to get things started here, as soon as we can.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I'm glad you're here as we continue to hope to broaden out this series to include all of Illinois and some of our Midwest partners as well. I personally have filmed a handful of indie films in Champaign and have loved my experience, so it's recommended, as well as Chicago. I want to take a minute before I got you, Kwame. I want to take a minute before we pivot to Kwame. Charles, I know you mentioned that you were on a set as an actor last week, and a lot of the questions have been around safety for actors and things like that. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that experience and or anything that specifically that SAG has put into place around that.
Yeah, so this was a shoot, it was a documentary shoot, so it wasn't that many folks. And I don't think it would have been that many folks, which was a lucky thing for us because we were able to kind of like test it out and see how it works. And I was happy to be on that set, one, just as an actor and as having an opportunity to get back to work, but then also as you know, president and just seeing kind of, you know, how it all works. So we were there, it was 10 folks. Everybody would on crew side for me, for an actor, was really supportive and understanding, and knowing that on set I would be the only person at that time when I was filming that would have to go without face covering. While we were there shooting, when I wasn't shooting, excuse me, constantly the producers and the director, you know, do you need anything? Do you need any PPE? We have it all here. So it was made clearly available for myself and the rest of the crew. Personally, I felt safe the entire time. When we sat down for lunch, we were over at Space Stage Studios, and they did an amazing job of staggering the lunch call. They also did an amazing job of staggering eating facilities, because we normally sit at those, you know, the long tables, and it's like 8-10 people at a table. There was only 3 people at a table, so that way social distancing could be adhered to. And then the owner of the studio was going around and wiping down doorknobs and wiping down, you know, high contact surfaces. So, you know, just from looking at it as an actor, like I said, I felt really safe, and I talked to the other actors and crew, and so did they. So I think that, you know, we got a viable way forward for small productions.
Thank you for sharing that. I know you mentioned it was a doc, to Brad's point earlier, did you have any hair and makeup?
I didn't have hair and makeup. I did have wardrobe, and she had gloves, and again, face mask, you know, even though her normal job would be to get really close on me, and that's something that some folks are kind of, you know, they'll say, hey, is this okay? You know, I'm going to go ahead and like fix your buttons and stuff like that. She went a step beyond that and was just like really, really careful to get my consent and permission, even with the face mask and gloves. So it was really reassuring.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So as we start to have some questions come in, and feel free to pop them in the Q&A, I want to throw it back to Kwame for I know there's a lot of specifics in the kind of mandates and requirements you just put out. I was wondering if you could give us kind of a high level overview or speak to anything specific that you feel is important specifically for filming in phase 3.
Well, phase 3, the most important thing is the 10 or less crew size, making sure that we're limiting the amount of interactions and thus the possibility for transmission. That's why phase 3 it's important to keep that down until we get the numbers at a point where, you know, the health department feels comfortable. There are some options for using crew in creative ways and social distancing ways, because that's the primary principle, is the 6-foot distancing. So if you can cluster crew in, say, a pod of 10, and then in 30 feet, there's another pod of 10, that's a possibility. But we're dealing with all kind of permits on a case-by-case basis right now. We're looking at every situation individually and figuring out how we can adjust and keep people safe at the same time. PPE is an important part of the guidelines, making sure that crew have PPE available to them, and they are wearing PPE at all times when applicable. Feel that's a good way of keeping transmission down. We also want to make sure that hygiene is highlighted, that high contact areas, like Charles was talking about, were being constantly cleaned, restrooms are being constantly cleaned, equipment is being constantly cleaned, and that sets are cleaned and sterilized on a regular basis, not only throughout the day, but after filming. And especially when it comes to location, we want to make sure that the locations are sterilized before and sterilized after they're being used. We also recommend testing 48 to 72 hours before the beginning of production. We feel like this is an excellent stopgap measure to stop transmission. I mean, that's a general overview. I mean, there's a lot of specifics in the guidelines about casting and, grip electric equipment, and, basically limiting contact, separating clients from agency and from the rest of the crew, and keeping people in separate locations as much as possible, minimizing scouting, using virtual scouting when you can, using virtual meetings when you can, that kind of thing.
Got it. Thank you. Eunice has a question specifically around micro budget films. Can you speak to, I know you mentioned permits are going out on a case-by-case basis. Can you speak to on an indie level what that process potentially looks like?
Well, again, we'll be looking at every permit on a case-by-case basis, no matter if it comes from an independent source or a larger entity. We'll take a look at the logistics of each shoot and make recommendations and make sure that they're able to stay within the guidelines. So we at the film office, we feel that independent film, and from the independent film to the largest film, deserve the same amount of attention. We often spend a lot of extra time with independent filmmakers, helping them through the process, helping them through the permitting process, and also giving them information on things such as locations and assets that may be available through the city, and that kind of thing. So definitely, we feel that the independent film industry is the future of the city, and we definitely want to encourage micro budget filmmaking in any kind of way. So whatever help you need, just feel free to reach out to the office.
Cool. Just a quick follow-up on that, Kwame, will you be requiring COVID reps in order to ensure that the guidelines are being upheld, or are the productions being upheld on an honor system for indies?
Yeah, I mean, everything is going to be on an honor system for everyone. The city won't be policing sets. When you fill out your permit, there's a box there that you'll check that says that you promise to follow the guidelines. And we're hoping that people will be able to, self-police, and we're pretty sure that the crews and the cast will also be there to police because they want to work in a safe environment.
Angie, this is Chris. I know that,
Yeah, go for it.
and Brad can speak more on the national white paper. It's basically more than a requirement. It's going to be a position. I know that Disney in particular is already posting for COVID coordinator position here in the Chicago area. They have a job listing, and happy to share that. So they're looking to hire, and I know that talking to Brad and Mark over at IA, discussions, they're doing a lot of training and a lot of discussions as to where that person will be in terms of the crew, overall crew makeup. Any of the large scale productions are definitely based on the white paper going to require a COVID coordinator from the employer. The employer will be doing
and
that.
I can add to that we know that the IA through their training trust is developing a training program for a COVID officer, for lack of a better word, and that they're intending the studio mechanic locals to train the first aid personnel for the people interested in doing that position. So that's what's happening as they're still working on the final version of the white paper. I can honestly say that they're looking around. There isn't a training program available just yet that I found for a COVID officer that involves a certification. There's all kinds of training that gives you a certificate of completion, but not a certification. So it's among a lot of things that are in flux and being developed, and the IA feels that the medics who work on films are the likely department from which to draw these officers.
And just as a word from SAG-AFTRA, we're going to require that productions have a COVID supervisor, just to make sure that everything is being taken care of.
Got it. So kind of along those lines, speaking for you, Brad, Liz says that they've been taking the online contact tracing training certification through Oakton Community College and wondered if anyone at 476 would want to sign up for their August class. But secondly, will contact tracing training be a part of the COVID supervisor's role? Or is that something that we can speak to yet as we're developing that?
I know that the city does contact tracing, so yeah, the city does a lot of contact tracing when you interface with the health department.
Yeah, and I'll just add that a lot of this is unknown right now. Speaking with the IA Film, Television, and Commercial Office in Los Angeles, they're working out an aggressive training program with certification exclusive for the film industry. So while we're waiting for that, we're having our members take whatever COVID they like and reimbursing them if there's a payment involved. And I'll take a look at the Oakton one and see if that's something we might want to offer to our members.
For those of you, the white paper that we keep referring to, many of you know about, there is a specific page 13, designated COVID compliance officer, as Brad had pointed out, and it doesn't indicate, unless I'm reading it incorrectly, anything about the tracing aspect of it, but common sense would tell me that that individual, if God forbid somebody does report or test, that they would be the person to communicate directly with the public health officials. Does that make sense, Kwame? You know, that they would be the point of all things COVID, both from a compliance protection standpoint, but also for the purpose of if somebody reports with that they would interface with the local or state public health, depending on what jurisdiction they're in.
Yes.
Got it. I have a few questions on kind of this idea of a COVID rep or COVID coordinator. So I'd love to tackle those. For you, Charles, do you know, Tavoris Johnson asked, does the requirement for the COVID rep extend to all budget levels, or is that the only required for higher contract level productions? Do true indies micro budgets get any form of exception to this rule?
My understanding, all level budgets are going to have that requirement to have some type of a, you know, an actual dedicated COVID supervisor. I'm curious to see what that training is and how that affects budgets for those smaller budget films. Hopefully, like you all have been speaking about it, you know, there'll be some type of training that doesn't cost or doesn't cost much. So.
Yeah, we'll be you know, speaking for our local, we'll be training many of these interested first aid personnel to do this, and the cost of the training for our members will be free. And as far as our training department is concerned, we're always continuing to train non-members, and at no cost when there's allows. It's how we grow as a union. We're up to 1,500 members in Local 476 now, and I think maybe 10 years ago we had 600 or 700. You know, we're always looking for talent in the industry, and we get them trained. So that would, I think, filter to the independent world some of those people, and a lot of our union and first aid people work non-union if they're available. So I think that might be, as we open up a little bit, I think that might build a bridge to where we're going.
Thank you, Brad. I have another question on the idea of a COVID coordinator, if anyone knows the answer to this. Catherine Mraz asks, will the COVID coordinators need to be a part of the 10 or less rule? And will COVID coordinators be able to double up as another department if they have experience in that field? So for example, could a first AD who's also certified act as a COVID coordinator for independent productions?
So the 10 is cast and crew total. The number is 10. Everybody is included in that number.
And on the doubling up, again, it's on scale. I was participated or watched a webinar with the commercial producers last week, and one of the panelists was a first AD, and he basically stated, with so much going on in that part of, you know, in a first AD's world, having the COVID responsibility would not be efficient, nor would it be managed in terms of the compliance, because the checklist, as we've all seen, is very long, both in prep, and then the COVID coordinator, as I understand it, is required to be on the set for the entirety of the shooting to make sure any of the movements are taking place, people are, entering and exiting properly, but also, as Kwame has pointed out, all of the sanitization that must take place, rapidly between scenes, on equipment, and so forth. So that particular position is really going to be, as I understand it, and Brad has said, it's evolving. I think it's a very, it's an interesting opportunity, and hopefully in a short term, for some young people to get involved and get trained and potentially, make that their expertise, along with, some of the other two, and to potentially make that an opportunity. But the doubling up, at least on commercials and large scale production, the recommendation was that would not be it wouldn't be efficient, nor would it be compliant.
Yeah, I would agree with my pal Christine that it's too important a position, and part of the what's envisioned for that position is autonomy, and with total control and total focus on that. So as Christine pointed out, on the bigger shows, the TV shows, and the bigger budget stuff, it would certainly be one person. And if the IA is successful in getting control of that position, that's not something that is normally done anyways.
Got it. I think what's coming up for me as we're talking about this is we can't underestimate the budgetary impact that this will have on independent productions, especially micro budget features. And I guess my question to you all is do you know if there are any programs that might be started to offer support, or COVID supervisors if there's an indie team that doesn't have the resources internally to create that?
No, but I think it's a great idea.
To explore.
I think it's a great idea, and it makes good sense, kind of to have, like we're trying to, put together this COVID resource, potentially have again, an entrepreneurial opportunity for someone, a group of people to take the training and then work as a consortium, if you will, to especially with the independent and micro budget films, to make sure that they have the resources and are in compliance for the safety of their team. Yeah,
absolutely. I have one more question on kind of COVID coordinator, and then I want to pivot to some other topics. For some clarification, if there's additional crews offsite, builders, fabricators, offsite DITs, etc., would they also need a COVID coordinator at their facility if they're also 10 or less and offsite, kind of a separate division of the crew, or is that just for the main set?
Well, I would think, and of course this is unknown, what the restrictions would be that will be negotiated, but with our rigging crews, our off-production crews, a lot of that depends on how many people they're having and what kind of work they're performing that day. They often get a first aid medic on some days, and I don't know if it would work exactly the same way, but I'm sure they're talking about it, and again, it'll probably have a lot to do with where we are with the virus at any particular time as well, I would imagine. I'm ever the optimist, and I'm hoping this thing's gonna go away. But until it does, we're moving full speed ahead with education. in Hollywood and the training that that's going to be offered.
Great, thank you, Brad. Kwame, two super quick questions thrown at you. Vincent asks, who do we contact to make suggestions for additions to the standard safety guidelines that have been released? Or how can people participate in that conversation?
Yeah, feel free to email us any suggestions that you have to the Film Office website. I mean, to the Film Office email, which is on our website. And yeah, we'll take any suggestions into consideration.
Cool. I lied. I have 3 really quick questions for you, so 2 more. Do you have any recommendations, or is there a focus? Oh, hold on. Anthony, to testing facilities that can turn test results in that kind of 40 to 75 hour window, 2 to 3 days? Do you have any recommendations for
the
those?
City of Chicago has a link on the Department of Health to sites. The sites are privately managed. They're not managed by the City Health Department. So you can access the City Health Department website and they can point you in the direction of different types of testing. And, you know, there's a variety of different types of testing options there, and you can find out which one works best for you.
Thank you. Alyssa asks, and I think we just covered this, but Alyssa asks, as the city gives permits and producers sign off on following COVID guidelines, could the City Film Office do random set visits to make sure best practices are being followed on lower budget projects?
Yes, we will do some set visits while this is kicking off, just so that we can make sure that people are adhering, and then also we just want to feel comfortable with moving forward, you know, just as an office observing how production moves forward and seeing if there's any hiccups or any adjustments that need to be made for phase 4. So yes, be on your P's and Q's. There will be random set visits.
You have heard, he has spoken, guys. You have heard it. Okay, and last, to kind of cap this COVID supervisor conversation, do you guys know if there's a link or information available somewhere for training or certification requirements, or is that information in process?
The only thing that I have seen is the identification of what this compliance officer will be in the white paper, and as Brad pointed out, I think that's all being formalized, especially in light of some of the union negotiation piece of this as to where that, if that position will land as a union position. Brad?
Yeah, I as I said, I don't think that there's going to be all kinds of certification for COVID officers in the private sector, in various industries, and you know, so that's the answer. In terms of what's going to happen with the work that we do, we're thinking that the final version of the white papers will indicate that that is trained IA people doing those jobs. But that's not set in stone. I know that some of what we're hearing from the studios in regards to television productions is that they're going to hire a phalanx of PAs to wipe down stuff, and that's all great. But it's definitely unknown in terms of who's getting certified for this just yet. And I know, anyways. I hope that answers that.
Got it. Yeah, I think there was some internet stuff, but I think the basic that I got away from both of you guys was that it's in process, not yet defined. It's being worked on.
I've been all over the internet trying to find training with certification for COVID officers, just able to find, a certificate that you're certified, and everything pretty much says completion of a class, which is not a certification. I haven't looked in the last couple of days, but it's coming, and it's coming in a big way, I would imagine.
Here's some of the requirements that Disney is asking for on their posting: OSHA and health and safety experience, military experience, medic RN EMT experience working on set with feature or television production. So those are some of the requirements that they're looking for and prefer for the hiring of this Disney position. So kind of gives you a flavor of.
To Christine's point, yeah, I was just going to say, to Christine's point, the lion's share of our medical personnel are either active or retired Chicago Fire Department paramedics. So they have that kind of experience, and they've been our medics for as long as we've had medics, which is probably since late 70s. So they have that film experience, which is it's very important. And the training as a paramedic, which, if you don't know, is intense. So, and the military part, probably some of them were in the military too, for all I know. But Disney seems to have one of the only kind of specific requirements for this job that I've heard. But it makes sense to me anyways. Sorry to cut you off, Christine.
No, not at all. That's.
We have a few more minutes here. I want to answer a couple questions quickly. Brad, from Anthony, he says, you keep saying when the final version of the white paper comes out, is there another version with revisions that we have not heard about, or is there a timeline on when
That's
final version?
That's not been approved, so they're still talking about things. Actually, I'm going on this Zoom right after this with our international president and hoping we'll find out a little bit. We know that there's some issues with some of the unions about the protocol going back. It's not done yet. And it wasn't ever put out that it was. It was just the first version of it is what have been told since the beginning. Is that your understanding, Kwame and Christine?
Yes.
Indeed. And with LA going back into production, was announced yesterday that LA will go back into production. LA County has announced that production can start again. Mayor Garcetti announced last night that production can start in LA. So my guess is that a lot of that is going to come to fruition very rapidly with those pressure points coming to bear.
Did you drink a bottle of vodka,
the next wave. And let's face it, some of this is going to be trial and error.
Better, yeah.
Everybody is, learning as they go, and Kwame can attest to that more than anyone, trying to figure out where all the moving pieces are and the intersection between public health, government, and and just sometimes just communicating so people know, but the next day it changes. So I think everybody, pardon?
Christine.
Yeah.
We all should get Kwame a big old vat of vodka.
Well,
so I think,
you
there's
sound,
no timeline, Angie, to your specific question, but I think it'll be accelerated, the opportunity for production to start again.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. You sound like you're going through molasses there, so I think
What?
we got the.
Yeah, you're losing your signal, Christine. Sorry.
What did you say, Angie? I missed you. I missed it.
I just wanted to add.
Yeah, I've got the worst internet connection in the city of Chicago.
I just wanted to add that, I think a lot of the questions and a lot of things we're talking about can be answered if we can just slowly start doing what we do. I think that'll help us moving forward to answer questions. And I'm just looking forward to the day when we can start shooting one of our TV shows, or we're doing a few commercials, albeit very small, very technically challenged, but I'm looking forward to that, because I think from where we left, and Kwame and Chris have probably heard me say this before, we've been doing our own training. We're a different species of human. We wash our hands more, we wear masks, and I'd love to give it a slow try and get people back working slowly. And I think that'll answer a lot of these questions that we've just been killing ourselves trying to answer.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. We just have a few minutes here. We have a couple questions, and I know that we keep getting questions about insurance. What is happening with insurance companies? Are they developing requirements? Any update on issues surrounding insurance bonding, holding up production moving forward? I know that we have not yet been able to answer those questions, and I'm just throwing it out. Does anybody have any further information on that at this time?
I do not.
Okay. To our participants, we hear you on the insurance stuff. We are working on being able to answer some of those questions and pulling some resources and some experts. It's an evolving thing. So as soon as we have more information, we will keep you posted. The last question I would love to end on in service of uplifting is Christina asks, for someone like a fresh and recent student graduate trying to get a chance to work in the film industry during these challenging times, where can I and where should I start? Is there still hope for us? Thank you.
Well, I'll just.
Charles, what? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, no, I was just going to say the silver lining in this nightmare we're going through is we're looking at more work than ever. We've had probably our 3 or 4 biggest years in a row, but I mean the amount of people looking to build studios, the amount of content that's being produced, the fact that everybody has binged everything that has already been made, and the cupboard is running dry. There's never been a time to try and get in the film business in Illinois than whenever this ends, that begins, that day. It'll be the best opportunities for everything. That's my take.
And I completely agree with you, Brad. We may be on pause, and when we return, things might not look exactly the same, but there will be a return. So I would say stay vigilant. Keep doing exactly what you're doing today, logging into Zooms and getting information and trying your best to build resources in this time. Most importantly though, y'all, and this goes for folks that are trying to get in on the crew side and also the acting side, don't take this as an opportunity to say, hey, things haven't been figured out yet, so I'm just gonna put myself at risk to try to get ahead and like get an opportunity. Please, please, please adhere to all of the safety guidelines that's coming from the city, that's coming from the white papers and from the unions, because we have best interest in mind to keep everybody safe. So don't try to get ahead of it and put yourself at risk to get ahead and to get a job. Take care and be safe.
Thank you so much, Charles. Well, with that, this completes Indie Film Town Hall Part 3. Our next one, as stated, will be on June 25th from noon to 1, talking about tangible ways to address diversity within the film community here in Chicago. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining. If you guys please stay tuned for the next one. And this recording will be posted online for anybody to review here probably within the next day or so.
Thanks, Angie.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
job.
Great, thanks.
Enjoy
Thanks,
your day,
guys. We'll see you
everybody.
soon.
Bye-bye.